Hello again, world. It is, I want to say June 15th. It's around midnight. I'm having a nice, relaxing time in this chair. I've been thinking about mental health, you know, but not, not in the crazy, I don't love that term. It's not a great mental health. That's the term. For some reason, the mental health, when you hear someone say that term, it's always the most insane, unstable person you know talking about what it is to be mentally healthy. I don't love the term, but I'll use it. It's a little tough to pay attention to the news, see what's going on, and feel sane because there's a lot of insane things happening. And it's not just the news, just a lot of insane things that even if you ignore the news, it trickles into your life, whether you like it or not, Like you can ignore the bombs that are being dropped, on the other side of the world if you want to, but you can't ignore the economic shifts that impact your life, and the jobs that you lose, or the poison in your food that makes you and your whole family sick. You can't ignore those sorts of things. A lot of it feels insane, and it's hard to feel sane in this world. It's hard to feel like you have any control over it. And one of my favorite podcasts I've ever listened to was with Paul Conti. I'm pretty sure his name is. He's a psychiatrist from Stanford. He was on the Lex Friedman podcast. And he talked about two main pillars of mental well-being are agency, a sense of control over what happens to you and your environment, and gratitude. Those are two pillars. If you have those two things, you will be mentally well. Basically, this is the observed trend. So this sense of control and whether or not you have control over what's happening to you, what's happening around you, is deeply important for whether or not you feel mentally okay. And it's hard to feel like you're in control of anything because you watch the news, and lots of people went out to protests this weekend. A lot of people mobilized for that, which is cool. No kings, right? I'm not a big protest guy, but then Trump was saying, I don't want people to protest, and that made me want to go do it, Don't tell me what to do, sort of thing. So you can do things like that, but by and large, it doesn't feel like you have control over things. So we have to escape this. And luckily, we live in America, or at least I do. And we do still live in a representative democracy. And I like to complain about how politicians are, it's a big popularity contest, and politicians are vapid, spineless, people-pleasing shills. But the good thing about this is that it's a popularity contest, and if you live here, your opinion does actually matter if you communicate it through the proper channels. Even Trump cares about being popular. So if he feels like something is popular or unpopular, then he'll change his behavior. He'll do something different. So protests are, those are probably good. But even more effective, something I tried recently, which I'd never done before, was just putting in a phone call to a congressman, to a representative in Delaware. That was scary. Phone calls are scary, right? But it wasn't too bad. I wrote a couple sentences. I called in for Senator Chris Coons, and then his nice staffer picked up the phone, said hello. And then I read my script. I said, "Hi, this is, Nathan Walker. I'm a constituent in Newark, Delaware. I've never called in before, but I just wanted to voice my opinion about what's happening in Gaza. You can argue about whether it's justified, but at this point, seems like the Israeli government is starving this entire group of people. They haven't let any food in for 2 months. At that point, it was 2 months. And they say, you're supposed to be really specific about what you care about so you can get put into a bucket as they write the call logs. So I said, I hope I can count on Senator Coons to use whatever leverage he has to make U.S. aid to Israel conditional. I forget the second thing, a specific thing I said. And supporting a ceasefire. It's 2 specific things. And I said, that's it. And he said, great, thanks for calling in. Do it again, anytime. And I said, okay. And it took less than 5 minutes. It was nice. And it's nice because it's not a very tense conversation. Like, they don't care what your opinion is. They're just a staffer, right? You're just calling in to let them know that you're a constituent and this is something you care about. And it was funny. A few days later, I think I called in on a Friday. And then on maybe Sunday or Monday or something, a few days later, Israel did the whole, they set up this this humanitarian corridor thing where they let in a small amount of food. They let in 3 trucks of food or something, when in reality they needed at least 10 times that to feed people. But anyway, and the reports were that there was a lot more pressure from the U.S. and others to allow aid into the region, and they were forced to respond in some measly fashion. And that was nice for my brain to see a little cause and effect. Of course, it was just one phone call, and I'm in the tide of many other people who are probably doing the same thing. But that was nice. It was a nice change between the normal sense of complete inefficacy and helplessness to see some modicum of control over these bad things that are happening. So it really is. It's a nice thing. It is a privilege to be living in the U.S. because your opinion does matter if you communicate it in the right channels. So I'd encourage, if you're feeling stressed out about what's going on in the world, try to maximize those things that you actually have some control over. And then it's really all you can do. That's all you can do is, there's a lot of suffering in the world. There's, this group of about 2 million people in Gaza that are suffering. But there's also millions of people, being killed in conflicts that you just don't hear about. I was trying to, the Syrian civil war, millions of people have been killed. There are more slaves today than there ever have been in history. It's a combination of forced labor, human trafficking, sex work. I just heard a story about there's these 2 countries, can't remember the names of them, but a lot of people fleeing conflict from one country into the next. They cross a river. They end up in a neighboring country seeking, some stability and any opportunity at a life that they could have. They cross the river literally with nothing in hopes of some stability. And there are people waiting on the other side. They sort of watch for them to greet them. And there's a story of this one guy who crossed over and someone waved him and said, "Hey, come on over here. I have a job for you. I have some work for you." He was very excited about that, of course. That's what he was looking for. And long story short, of course, these people are preying on the vulnerable migrants, and they trick them into coming with them, get them onto a boat, and they become slaves on these fishing boats for years at a time. They actually stay on the boats for years at a time. This guy was on a boat for 5 years, and they would just catch fish all day, and then another ship would go out to their ship, get the fish, go to shore. So they never even went to shore. It was years of being in the ocean. And that is the food that they feed shrimp. Shrimp that we would buy here. So anyways, it's a tangent. The point is there's a lot of suffering in the world, and it doesn't help for me to sit here and languish and worry about a bunch of things I can't control. There are things I can control. There are things I can do. I can, call my representative. It takes less than 5 minutes. It's very easy. Great. And then I can go do my job and actually, be a useful, productive human being. Some jobs are worthless, but some jobs are great and help people, and anytime. I have this weird soft spot for people in the service industry. It's like it just, I'm sure people can relate to this. When you go out and you get a nice coffee and this person has made you a nice coffee and they hand it to you. And if it wasn't weird, I would just stop them and say I just want you to know how incredibly grateful I am. This sort of thing, I'm so happy to have this coffee and I'm so glad you made it for me. And I think you're great. Thank you for coming to work today and putting in all that effort to make my life better. It's fantastic. It's people doing their jobs and working hard and helping others. It's what makes the world a good place, right? So it's discouraging that you can't end the suffering of millions of people on the other side of the world, sure. But for the little that we can do, we can do that. And then we can live our lives in a productive and healthy way and focus on the things that we have control over. And then we won't feel insane. And that's important. It's important to not feel insane. So I hope that's all for now. I hope that you guys can focus on whatever you have control over in your life. Sometimes it's not very much. I recommend this book anytime I can. There's a book, Man's Search for Meaning, by Viktor Frankl. And he's a psychiatrist who, you can tell I like psychiatrists, who, survived a concentration camp, World War II. And one of the famous ideas from that book is that he talks about the space between stimulus and response as the thing that no one can take from you. That's the thing that you will always have control over. And I think he really understood this idea that about focusing on what you can control as a way to stay sane. Because in a concentration camp, you are stripped of everything that you have control over. You don't get to control how you spend your time, what you do, your own body. You're beaten and starved. But he retained a clarity of mind because he focused on what he did still control, which is, I can't control the stimulus. I can't control what's happening to me right now, but I can control the sacred space inside of me where something happens to me. I get to pause and decide and control how I respond. And that was the only way that he stayed sane through all of that. So sometimes it's not a lot. Today, the thing for me was there was a bunch of cinder blocks outside that I needed to load in my car and drive over to my sister-in-law's house. And they've been sitting outside for 2 months more. Just a stupid thing that's always on the back burner of I don't feel like doing that. I don't feel like doing that. And this morning I thought, that is the thing that I will do to make me feel good about myself today. And gosh darn it, I did it. And I did feel good about myself after. So anyways, this is already too long. Have a nice evening, daytime, whatever time it is, and Godspeed. Good luck pursuing all those things that you have control over. Goodbye.